Jeff Goodman, who works with ESPN. Jeff does college basketball, NBA basketball. He does summer recruiting, high school stuff. Jeff does a little bit of everything. Jeff, I know I drove you crazy trying to get you on the show, but we want to talk a little basketball here in Tuscaloosa. All I want to talk about is football around here. Can you believe that, Jeff?
Yeah, it kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But people are going to be excited to see Alabama's backcourt next year. Obviously, we know what they've done recruiting, what Avery's done, and it should be interesting next year once they get some high-level talent in there.
Well, you see all these guys across the country. I'm sorry, Dad. You see these guys across the country. Tell out the listeners what Alabama's getting with Colin Sexton and John Petty, the backcourt that you're talking about.
You know, I just saw John Petty about a week and a half ago at a tournament, the Hall of Fame in Springfield, Mass. here, and I was surprised he didn't make the McDonald's game. I think he's a guy that certainly could have. You know, he was on the fringe, but, man, he's just got kind of a pro game to me. You know, he's got great size for a wing. He can make shots. He's big. He's strong. He's athletic. And Sexton's just a guy who can get buckets. Kind of the new age point guard, not a true point, not in terms of what we think of a point, but this is a guy that can. Both of these guys are exciting. They're athletic. They're strong. They're tough. So I think they can come in as freshmen and make an impact right away, and they're going to need to.
Yep, Dan.
Jeff, this is Coach. I want to thank you for being on, because if I want to know something about basketball, I try to find out what you say.
I really appreciate that coming from you. I really do, and I love being on with you guys. And your son, I've known him for a long time, so I would do anything for him. Last week it just didn't work out because I was at ESPN, and sometimes the hard part of that, Barry, is I never know when I'm going on until the morning of.
Yeah.
So it's hard to plan sometimes when I'm in Bristol.
I understand.
What I wanted to ask you was, and
Sure.
Doesn't mean anything about when I coached, but in the 80s, if you went 11-7, you got in the NCAA yet because the teams were so good.
Yep.
The league has dropped a little bit in number-wise as far as, basically 3 teams getting in the NCAA. I get asked that all the time. My answer is maybe from 1 through 14, they need to recruit better. I don't know what the answer is to that. We were fortunate when I coached to have a lot of good players in the state. We got them.
Yeah.
Is there an answer to that?
I don't think there's an easy answer. I think part of the problem is right now, the mandate from the SEC office was to play tougher schedules, right? I mean, it was hire big name coaches, number one, and play tougher schedules. I remember talking to Billy Donovan about this 5-6 years ago, non-conference, and Billy was upset. He was like, he really had never played the toughest non-conference schedule, but at that point it was Kentucky and Florida. They were the flagship programs of the SEC, so they needed them to do that, and then they needed other programs, or they told other programs to fall in line. A lot of those programs weren't ready for it. And that's where you base everything on these days, is you've got to do well as a league in November or December to have those resume wins when conference play starts, and there just aren't enough out there right now. You've got Kentucky every year, but other than that, right now you've got 2 fringe top 25 teams in South Carolina and Florida. So how are these other teams going to become tournament teams in league play when you do get better? I mean, let's face it, some teams get worse. But there are some teams that get better, but how do we really find that out unless they beat Kentucky or maybe South Carolina and Florida? We don't. So I don't think a lot of the programs, frankly, were ready to schedule up in the non-conference. Not yet.
Okay, good point.
Yeah, Jeff, you bring a good point. Like, I look at NC State, and they're playing Duke one night, and then then they're playing Louisville. I look at Iowa State. They play Kansas, and I look tonight they're playing West Virginia. So it gives them so many opportunities to get quality wins.
Right.
And so Alabama's sitting here 6-2, but they don't have any quality wins because the teams in the league don't provide that. And I keep hearing everybody say, "Oh, the SEC is 1 year away. They're 1 year away." We've been saying that now for
every year,
5 or 6 years, and I think it kills Alabama because they don't play Kentucky
Florida
twice.
At home.
Yeah.
You can't lose to Florida at home if you want to be an NCAA tournament team in the SEC, and you're in that 4 to 6, 7 range. You can't.
Yeah, I agree. Does the SEC, does it hurt Kentucky? They don't get challenged a lot. I know they lost at Tennessee, but they don't have, every week a really challenging game like maybe Duke, North Carolina, those teams do. Does that hurt those guys when they get to the NCAA tournament?
See, I think it helps them. I think it helps them because you're a little fresher. You could take some nights off to some extent. You're not taking them off, but you don't have to play your A game to win. You play enough good games. You play enough that I think it helps them more than anything because, especially for a young team, what does it do? It gets their confidence up, right? Which is what a young team generally needs. They've hit their rough stretches, at Tennessee, obviously Kansas at home. So they're not a great team, but I think you want to get your confidence up going into the NCAA tournament, and generally that's what they do.
Yeah. I got these mid-major teams, I call them mid-major, like Middle Tennessee. Jeff, are these guys handled? I mean, Middle Tennessee, they blew out Vanderbilt.
They did.
Is this a team that will have to win their conference tournament to get into the big dance, which doesn't seem fair to me, but they have a hard time scheduling those marquee games like we talk about?
Yeah, I would say probably. There aren't many teams you look at this year and it's kind of crazy you say that. Because the bubble is really weak, okay? I mean, you look at it and you look at some of the teams on the bubble right now, and you're looking at a Georgia, teams like that on the bubble, and you're saying to yourself, like, how? No disrespect to Mark Fox, but there's no way that team would have been on the bubble 5 years ago. And I don't know what's happened because it's not like you look at a bunch of mid-majors and say, well, they're right there on the bubble as far as playing their way in right now. I mean, Middle still lost to Tennessee State, that hasn't been very good, and Georgia State. Loss at VCU you can throw away. Like that's one that you don't even worry about for a mid-major. They're supposed to lose that game, but I guess if they run the table in the league, they've got a shot. If they win their last 8-9 games here, they got a shot to put themselves in the conversation, but I don't think it's likely.
Yeah. February the 11th, we're announcing the 16 teams as they stand at that period of time, with realizing that by the time March gets here, there'll be some change. Is that a good way to go about things?
Can't hurt, right? I mean, listen, our sport has enough trouble getting attention each year fighting with football, whether it's college football or the NFL. So I'm fine with it. I don't know how much it's going to do, but why not try new things, right? I mean, give it a shot, see if it helps. If it's good, maybe you add one more, maybe you expand it and do all 68 teams once. I don't know. I just feel like it can't hurt the level of attention that this sport gets because, frankly, it's all NFL, then it's college football, then it's NBA. Well, NBA is ahead of college football. Again, I like the fact that Dan Gavitt is trying some new things here, and I think they should continue to try these, type of, deals to try to get some more attention, whether it's, the SEC, Big 12 Challenge in January. I mean, what do you guys think? You guys were coaches. Like, I know you don't like it. I know as a coach you don't like it. You don't want to play a big time game that breaks up your conference schedule at the end of January. But when you understand it's good for the sport.
Yeah, I don't mind it. Here's what I wish they would do. Kentucky gets to play marquee games all the time. Send Kansas to Tuscaloosa. I mean, that would be a buzz here if Kansas was coming to Tuscaloosa. Kansas going to Kentucky, we see that all the time with Kentucky. So let some of these other teams in the SEC have a shot at a big-name team coming on their home
court.
We
care? The problem with that, I agree, it's good for Alabama. It's good for that one team that gets Kansas or that one Big 12 team that gets Kentucky. But do people really care? Are people going to watch Kentucky, Alabama any more than they watch Kentucky, Tennessee?
Well, probably not. Jeff, I got to get your comment on this. In the 80s, maybe the 90s, basketball was very physical. I think the rules committee, first of all, has hurt the game with not letting the officials call advantage, disadvantage. But I was with Derek McKee and Ori and Farmer and some of those guys, and they played in the NBA, and they try to tell me that Steph Curry, not that he couldn't have played back in their era, but
It would have been different.
It'd have been different. He said, Derek Harper hand checking you. He puts you wherever he wants you. Like he can get right up on you, and they let him play physical. He goes into the hole after doing one of his little shimmies. They would knock him in the third row, and it would just be a foul and shoot too. If he hit a three and tried to show him up, the next time he hit a three, they had knocked the guy in the third row. Could Steph Curry? Obviously could have played, but could he have been as effective maybe back in the 80s the way the game was played as the way it is now?
Probably not. I mean, probably not. I still think he would have been a really good shooter, but would he have been as good driving to the basket and finishing? No, I don't think so because, again, look at his frame. Part of the reason he's so successful even getting the basket right now is you can't put your hands on him or it's a foul right away. But I still think it translates into, listen, how many better shooters have we seen, pure shooters, than Steph Curry over the last, in my lifetime? I'm 40. What am I, 40? I got it wrong. I told
30,
my wife.
30.
I thought I was 46. I think I'm 45. So once you get up this high, you guys know that, like, I lose track.
Yeah.
I think, again, it translates his shooting ability. Would he have been as good today as he was? Would he have averaged what he does now? Probably not, but he still would have been a heck of a player, just not the dominant player. And again, I think a lot of that would be, penetration and the fact that now he can get where he wants around the basket, and guys, they can't. You can't even chuck them without it being a foul. Right? You can't do anything. We're back when I was growing up. In the 80s, it was a war. I mean, I grew up in Boston here. It was a war with the Celtics.
But wasn't that better basketball, Jeff, than it is now? Wasn't it better basketball back then?
I thought it was. But I grew up watching the Celtics play the Sixers and the Lakers and the Bucks. When I don't know, I felt, and even college. I grew up watching Big East. Boston College was good then, and you come in, I'd see. Chris Mullin come in, St. John's, and the Pearl with Syracuse. That's how I grew up on that basketball. So, yes, I thought that basketball was much better than it is today.
Yep, Dad.
Well, contrary to popular belief, I've got a lot of friends that are officials. I know I almost got a lot of technicals, but I didn't get many. But the freedom of movement situation, to me, I would prefer they put in a sixth foul, that you had 6 fouls rather than 5. I know Hugh Durham's talked about that a lot. The freedom of movement is almost a freedom of movement to head to the free throw line in some games. 55 free throws in the Mississippi State-Alabama game the other night. It's just not, and I don't know the answer to it, but that's the reason I'm asking you. It's just not quite where it needs to be as far as a guy who likes college basketball, doesn't know a lot about it, but he might quit watching it because of the whistle.
Yeah, I mean, it depends what game you get, right? I mean, there's some games that are just absolutely brutal, and I think it depends on the officiating crew. Sometimes too, we talk about it, and I think the NCAA needs to try to take over the officials and have one uniform central deal in which officials aren't working 7, 10 out of 12, whatever it is. I mean, they're working. They're driving places to try to save money. They're tired, which means they're not at their peak as well. Because why? The NCAA won't pay them benefits. They won't make them full-time employees. So I think it's a little bit of everything, Wimp, as far as why the product is why it is. And I think if you improve all facets, hopefully it'll get better. I think certainly scoring's up over the last year or two now. And fans want to see that, right? I mean, they want to see more points scored. We know that. I mean, look at the NBA right now. I mean, they're scoring at a crazy pace, and most fans like that.
We're talking with Jeff Goodman with ESPN. Jeff, there's a little rift between Barkley and LeBron James. Barkley basically called out LeBron, saying he's being whiny, talking about getting more players there. He needs more players to win the championship. LeBron comes out last night and says, I'm not going to let him disrespect my legacy like that. I'm not the one who threw somebody through a window. I never spit on a kid. I never had unpaid debt in Las Vegas. I never said I'm not a role model. I never showed up to the All-Star weekend on Sunday because I was in Vegas all weekend partying. All I've done my entire career is represent the NBA the right way. 14 years, never got in trouble, respected the game. Print that. Is Charles Barkley have a point there, though, about him being whiny about the owner and the front office at Cleveland getting him more players to help him win a championship? Who's right there?
Yeah, I think they're both right. I think Chuck's right in terms of LeBron. Like, you got your guys here. You got Kyrie Irving. You got Kevin Love. You wanted Tristan Thompson to get paid? He got paid. Same agent. So you got 4 guys. Of course it's going to be top-heavy. And, no, you're not going to get as much talent as Golden State this year. There's nothing they can do about that. What they can do is they can bring in a backup point guard. They're going to do that before the trade deadline. But they also didn't want to give up too much, David Griffin, the GM of the Cavs, early on. He figures, you know what, he's going to see what happens. Maybe there's a team that at this point has basically decided they're not going to make the playoffs, and maybe they'll give away somebody at a cheaper rate than what he would have had to pay earlier in the year. So on one hand, I think Chuck's right about, like, keep it in-house. I mean, too many guys right now just complain to the media instead of just keep it in-house. And I think LeBron's right about the fact that, in a way, LeBron has done everything the right way over the course of his NBA career. I mean, he made one mistake, and I don't even put that on him when he did the whole decision thing to go to Miami. I think he was just taking orders or instructions of those around him, whether it was his crew or Nike or whatever it was. He was still kind of young, and he let them control that. But LeBron, for the most part, you know, you don't see him partying that much. You don't hear about him with women. Like, LeBron's been pretty darn good for somebody at that level, right? I mean, Michael Jordan had his issues, right, the gambling issues and whatnot. LeBron, you really don't hear anything about that he's done wrong. Plays hard pretty much every night. He defends. He passes. You know, he's all about being unselfish on the court for the most part. So there's not much you can pick apart with LeBron. So I think that's where LeBron's upset, is saying, listen, I do things the right way. Sure, you know, am I calling out that I want more talent? In a way, what's wrong with it? It's not the end of the world. But again, he's got to understand that the GM and the team has their hands tied a little bit because of the 4 salaries that they're paying. And they got Kyle Korver. They just went out and got Kyle Korver to replace J.R. Smith. That was a pretty good move.
Yeah. That anything else for Jeff before we let him get out here?
No, I appreciate Jeff being on. We've kept him on long enough. I appreciate it very much. And from time to time, hopefully we can get him back on as we go towards the NCAA tournament. Thank you.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, guys. Always good, and glad you guys are doing well.
Jeff, I appreciate it, buddy. Thank you.
All right, take care.